Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. If you've not attended one of these before, I normally run them every Friday at 2:30 UK time, and we have a look just as the US markets are opening. So we have a quick look at the major announcements for next week, then we'll have a look at the major markets. So we'll take a look at the usual global stock market indices, currencies, gold, silver, oil, metals, what else? Bitcoin, take a look at that. And then if there's any stuff you want looking at, if you put it in the chat on YouTube while I'm doing this live, I'll take a look at those when we've been through everything. The payrolls came in slightly worse than expected, not much worse. I think the market was expecting 160,000 jobs to have been added, and it came in 142, something like that. So not massively below. This has been the reaction from the S&P. So US markets had a weak day yesterday, but a weak Tuesday, and they were shut on Monday because of, what was it? Is it Labour Day? Sold off Tuesday, bit sideways Wednesday, drifted a bit lower yesterday, and lower again overnight. So I think it'd be interesting to see what happens today. I would, for now at least, still be looking to be a seller, I think, of these US indices. Let's see what happens. The dollar, quite a bit of volatility for the dollar. I'm short the dollar index at the moment. I did that video earlier in the week. I do one video a week on the channel where I talk about existing trades. So I'm short the dollar index. So a bit of volatility there. That could be interesting this afternoon. Gold, obviously some volatility for that because of the moves in the dollar. So yeah, I think it should be an interesting end to the week after these payrolls. Let's see. But we'll take a look at all this stuff in a sec. First of all, let's just get some of the housekeeping done. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts excuse me, no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. There we go. Okay. A quick one. I'm doing a webinar next Thursday night. So 12th of September at 7 o'clock in the evening, UK time. I'm going to talk about my approach to day trading US indices. So most of the trading I do is the stuff I talk about in the weekly video on the channel where I show the trades I've got. But I also do some day trading. I did actually do a day trade yesterday on the NASDAQ. I made a bit, didn't make much. And I'm doing a webinar on my approach next Thursday. Trading setup, so what do I look for indices? Where do I place the stop loss? The most important bit, of course. I was reading something the other day about somebody complaining about getting stopped all the time and thinking there was a conspiracy against them. Of course, that's not the case, but you've got to apply some thought to stop losses. I think it's the most important part of the trade. You don't just chuck them in randomly. You buy the NASDAQ and you put a stop in 50 points away. No. So where to place stop losses? When to take profits, how I figure out where to take profits, the low risk, high reward, false break approach. I think I did that yesterday. I bought the NASDAQ yesterday. Where did I buy it? Here. Down here yesterday, about half full. And it went up for a bit and then it came down again. But I like this low risk, high reward, false break approach. So I'll talk about that. And when not to trade, of course, just as important. I think the key to successful trading, one of the big things I think is not so much a magic system, whether it's Fibonacci, Elliott wave, MACD, 3 moving averages. It's having the patience and the discipline to know that there probably isn't a good trade there. So I think that's really important. So I'll talk about all of that. So that webinar is next Wednesday evening on Thursday. I'll talk about a bit more how you get access to it. You need to be in the WhatsApp group, but I'll talk about that a bit later. But that's what I'm doing. And if you can't make it on next Thursday night, then there'll be a recording available that I'll put in the WhatsApp group, but more about that later. Just a quick snapshot on my trades. I showed these trades on Thursday on the video I did in the channel on Thursday, and I was whinging about the NASDAQ trade I missed from the week before, and that was annoying. So I talked about my dollar index, the NASDAQ trade, and the Treasury bonds trade. So they've done okay today. So I did the dollar index trade earlier in the week. That's moved into profit. T-bonds has got to move on with this, the payrolls today. There's a trailing stop on that. Platinum's not doing very much, still a bit underwater on the pound trade. So a bit of a quieter week trading for me. It had been a good 3 weeks, a bit of a frustrating week over the last week. I missed out on a big NASDAQ trade, but otherwise everything's okay. So yeah, that's a quick update following on from the video midweek. So what have we got to look out for next week? There's quite a lot happening next week. I would say Wednesday's the big one. That's US inflation. Obviously all ties in to interest rates and all of that at the moment. So that's a big one on Wednesday. But on Monday, we've got Japanese GDP. So how well or not is the Japanese economy doing? And that might be interesting for dollar yen. You know, let's have a quick look at that now because I'll forget to look at it. I thought dollar yen is interesting. There's the dollar against the Japanese yen. The trend had been up for a long time. We've had that big sell-off in July, and now it's holding around the lows for the year pretty much. So I think that could be an interesting one on Monday. Japanese GDP, what impact does it have on dollar yen? Tuesday, we've got UK unemployment data. That comes out on Tuesday. Wednesday is that US inflation number. So that will be a big one, an hour ahead of the US market open. And then on Thursday, we've got European interest rate decisions. So I think the bigger news probably leaning towards the end of the week, next week. Right, that's it. That's it for now. We'll come back to some other stuff in a second, but let's take a look. Let's take a look at the markets. Let's start off with these US stock markets. So let's start off as usual with the S&P. It is interesting, I think. We had that big sell-off in August from 56.70 down to 51, so a 10% plus drop in the S&P. It's bounced back and it's failed. Was this the short opportunity before the next great US bear market? Could be. I mean, if you were, if you did want to go short, if you thought the US stock markets were overvalued, then going short with stops at 5,700 on the S&P is an interesting one. I mean, the big trend is still up. Let's see what happens. I wonder if we just get perhaps a bit of chop over the next month or so. And there's the US election, of course, isn't there, in November. So maybe we just have choppier markets after some of the good trends that we have had for 18 months or whatever it is. So let's see what happens. But from a short-term point of view, I mean, still a bit under the pressure. The trade I would do this afternoon, if it rallied a bit more, would be to sell short. We've got the high from Wednesday in the S&P at 55.54. The high from yesterday is 55.47. So I would be tempted to be a seller and see, do we see this market push a little bit lower? So interesting, it hasn't taken out the highs. That might be a concern for some when it comes to the trends. A little bit of a concern for me. But let's see. Let's see how it ends today and what happens next week. With the old doodah, the NASDAQ, the trade I missed. Never mind. If you haven't watched that video, I did a trade last week in the NASDAQ and I went short. Where was it? Here. I went short here. About here, 19,560. A week yesterday. Went short, trend was down, blah, blah, blah. Market sells off. I thought that's brilliant. Moved my stop to trailing. Got stopped out for a profit, but only 100 points. Should have sold it again. Because you can see, this level was a real barrier in the NASDAQ. 19,635. And then, of course, since then, bang. So I really should have gone short again. That was poor approach to trading. But anyway, yesterday we did see the NASDAQ push out briefly through Wednesday's high. Didn't really hang on to it. So again, I'd be a seller of strength in the NASDAQ today. But it looks like, even now it's turning around. It traded up to 18,940-ish. as markets opened, and it's already 180 points lower. Big old move in the first 10, 15 minutes. So an interesting day ahead, I think, for US indices. Let's see how it all ends up. But, like the S&P, I would say that... Oh, I've just got rid of my indicators. Can I bring them back? Not that I look at them that much, but let's put it on there. Relative Strength Index. There we go. Oh, what's that doing? Sorry, bear with me a second. There we go. How do I get rid of that? I don't want that. Okay. So yeah, I mean, the big trend for the Nasdaq going back to 2023 is up. There we go. So interesting to see what happens there, but under pressure still, and has been for the best part of a couple of weeks, the Nasdaq. So interesting to see how that all finishes this afternoon. That's that. The Dow, I mean, the Dow did push out to new highs beginning of September, new all-time highs. The Dow, it is quite interesting this at the moment. If you look at the differences between these US indices, that a lot of the tech, the likes of Nvidia and all that lot driving the market higher earlier this year, they have run out of steam. What's Nvidia doing? And I was thinking earlier the week it could be under pressure. Yeah, it's still a bit under pressure. But the Dow, has made, is relatively speaking the stronger out of the Nasdaq, Dow, S&P. Different makeup of stocks, of course. So that's interesting to see what happens with that one today. That's that. The Russell, the smaller cap US index, I'd still buy the dip. Bit scrappy, perhaps over the last couple of months or so. I'd still be tempted to buy the dip. So yeah, for US indices, still under pressure. I'd rather be a seller this afternoon, but let's see where it all ends. The FTSE, that was a good short on the FTSE if you fancied it. The FTSE retesting the early August highs up at 8,400. It has run out of steam and it's pushed back a bit. But again, on the FTSE, the big trend is up on the FTSE. I don't trade the FTSE that much. So, yeah, but I thought that was interesting. The DAX, I mean, the DAX did make fresh all-time highs. The German index made fresh all-time highs late August and has backed off since then. I did wonder yesterday, I put it in the WhatsApp group, I think it was sort of holding above the lows for Wednesday. It's since taken those out, but it's bounced back. It's a bit choppy, but again, I think it looks stronger than the US markets at the moment. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't do anything with that today. Let's see how it looks next week. The Hong Kong index, I would like to buy a dip here. I think we've looked at this before. Big downtrend, breaks out the downtrend, pulls back. Should I just buy it now and put a stop below 16,000? And is this market going to recover from here? I think that's an interesting market because it has moved clearly in recent years in the opposite direction to US markets. So interesting to see what happens with that one. The Japan 225, we had that massive just collapse from late July into August, bounce back, and it's halfway through the range at the moment. So not much interest for me there. So really, for me in the short term, US indices this afternoon, if they push back up to the highs of the last couple of days, that's potentially quite an interesting trade. Do they run out of steam again? That's probably the immediate focus for me this afternoon. So that's that for the indices. If we take a look at currencies, this dollar index is interesting. I said I'm short the dollar index at the moment from Wednesday, I think, of this week. But there's absolutely the argument to be a buyer of the dollar index. It's been sideways for the best part of 12 months. When we saw the market sell off in late December down towards 100, we did see the market turn around and rallied 6.5%, 7%, 650, 700 points. And here we are again. So if you really wanted to be a buyer of the dollar index, this is a good place, I think, from a more medium-term point of view. If you thought we were going to see a recovery in the US dollar index into the year end, it's quite interesting down here because this has been, such a base for the market in recent history, over the last 7 or 8, 9 months, whatever it is. So I think that's interesting. See what happens down there with the dollar. I'm still short for now. Got my stop loss in place. I think it's interesting to see what happens up here, up near yesterday's high. So if I wasn't short already and I wanted to get short, not that I'm saying that's necessarily the right thing to do, I think it's quite interesting up here to see what happens if it runs out of steam around the highs of yesterday or the highs late on Wednesday. Let's see. That could be an interesting afternoon, actually, for the dollar index. What happens up there? Let's see what happens. I don't know. Other markets, pound against the dollar. I think that's an interesting one. You know, pound against the dollar hit its best levels since March 22. So we had 2-year highs, pound against the dollar, at the end of August. I've been watching this trend. I would, again, there's maybe a trade there, you know, depending on if you think the dollar is going to weaken this afternoon. I've been watching, we've had this trend over the last few days, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, higher highs and higher lows. Do we see, is this a buying opportunity? I'd be tempted to be a buyer. I'm long already, so I'm in it already. But I'd be tempted to be a buyer and think about where my stop's going to go. I think that could be an interesting afternoon for the US, for the pound against dollar. Let's see how that works out. And dollar yen, you know, I mentioned that just because we had these lows in August, 141.70. The market rallied about 700 points off that. Are we going to see the same thing again? And we've got that Japanese inflation data out, not inflation, economic data out on Monday. So lots to watch, but immediately this afternoon, I'll be watching that dollar index. So I am hoping that it runs out of steam up here. Let's see, because that'd be good for my short dollar trade and good for my long pound against the dollar trade. So that could be interesting this afternoon. Gold, we had all-time highs in gold in August. I would say, you know, the trend is still up, depending on how you cut it. For gold, you know, it made all-time highs within the last month. I'd be a buyer of the dip in the short term. This 2470 level, I've been talking about it a bit in the WhatsApp group. That's been good. Short-term support. It was a level back in the 3rd week of August. The market bounced, and it bounced again on Wednesday of this week. So I think that's quite interesting. I'd be a buyer of the dip there. Silver. Silver's always a bit of a funny one, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know what I do with silver, to be honest. I mean, it looks very different to gold, doesn't it? I could be tempted even to go short silver. I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion on that one. Copper. I mean, this for me is another confusing one. I was long copper, but I got stopped out. It did hit all-time highs in May. It's been sliding since then. It's trying to build a base around about 394. But is it just going to leg down again as this correction downtrend continues, or are we going to see it build a base? I don't know. So I'm not too sure on copper, and if I'm not sure, then I don't want to do anything. I'll have a look at something else. But there's the trend on copper, going back a couple of years now. Let's see what happens. Let's talk about oil and gas. I mean, oil is, you know, near the lows for the year. The lows for the year were set very early in January at $69.20. And the market did trade to 69.37 yesterday. So came within 17 cents of the low for the year. So again, you know, a bit like that dollar index trade. If you thought, well, this is where oil turns around again, this is quite an interesting area, isn't it? We had those lows from late December as well, down at 67.80. So if I was a buyer, I'd probably have a stop loss, I don't know, at least $3.50 away from where we are now, and see if it does start to turn round. But I think there's probably plenty of time if it does start to turn round. Let's see. But, you know, if you look on the shorter term chart, the trend has been down since at least there, July. So what's that? 2 months of a downtrend. So interesting to see. Interesting one next week, I think. Oil, to see if we see it start to turn around. Natural gas, I did have a good short on natural gas the other week. I covered that in one of the videos. We have seen it turn around again. Nat gas, another sharp turnaround. It's interesting that it sold off and the old lows from early August held again at 185, and here we are at 213. So let's see what happens. It's all a bit sideways, natural gas, over the last 6 weeks or so. But let's see if it does push higher. Does it run out of steam again up at those levels? Let's see what happens there. And Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's just a bit boring, isn't it? I mean, the big trend on Bitcoin is up, going back to December 22. But it's just drifting, isn't it? Since we had those highs in March, were they all-time highs? They were, weren't they? Very briefly all-time highs in March, and it's just been drifting. So nothing too exciting in Bitcoin, I don't think. But lots to watch this afternoon. So like I say, the things I'll be watching, US indices, do we see them run out of steam again? And they are arguably struggling a bit, particularly the Nasdaq. So that's interesting. Dollar index, do we see this surge after the payrolls get knocked back again? I think that's interesting. And pound against the dollar, is this weakness a buying opportunity? So let's see. Let's see what happens this afternoon. So that's it. That's the stuff I wanted to look at. If you want to fire in the stuff you want looking at, and I'll just do the quick commercial break. So if you want to attend that webinar next Thursday evening, you just need to be in the WhatsApp group. And the WhatsApp group is a daily update from me in the morning and in the afternoon. Markets I'm watching. So I mentioned that pound against the dollar today. Trades I'm running. So at the moment I'm long treasury bonds, long platinum, short the dollar index, long pound against the dollar. So I talk about those, how they're going, whether I'm moving the stop, all of that. And Q&A, any questions throughout the day, you can fire them in. If you use the code YouTube, the link to the website is in the description, and it'll take you to the right page on the website, to the WhatsApp page, which looks something like that. And you can subscribe, but using the code YouTube, you get 20% off. So if you've never subscribed before, it will cost you £40 for the first month, and you can leave after a month. You're not signing your life away. Most people do stay longer for a month, which I'm happy about, because clearly they see some value. I enjoy doing it. It works for everybody, and I get a little bit of money, of course. So if you're in the WhatsApp group on Thursday, next Thursday, I'll give you, you'll get the link to that webinar that will run for at least an hour on Thursday night. That's what an update typically looks like for me, markets I'm looking at, and a chart of the day type thing. I also run a trading course, details on the website, 5-star Trustpilot reviews. I send a newsletter every Saturday, which is free. If you go to the website, there's a box at the bottom of the page to put your email address in if you're not on the newsletter list. And it's all on the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. And to find out who I trade with, go to bit.ly/DavidTrade. And all of this stuff is in the description to the video. Okay, so if you'd like to do that webinar, which is, so in effect it's going to cost you 40 quid. Trust me, it's well worth 40 quid. Okay, and you still get a month's worth of WhatsApp off the back of it. So yeah, if you can't afford that, then I can't help you. Right, let's take a look. Let's take a look at some of these markets then. Some of the stuff you want looking at. Let's have a quick look at what's going on. These really have turned around, haven't they? These interesting. So we had this is the S&P. So it did rally up, and it really has given up those gains. Now we do often see this headless chicken thing, don't we, over payrolls, where the markets thinks, oh, this is really good. Oh, actually, maybe it's not that good. I'm hoping we see the same thing with the dollar index as well. We did see it with T-bonds. So I'm long T-bonds at the moment. And it's ramped up and it's gone all the way back down and more. So I'll probably come out of that, be stopped out of that for a profit this afternoon. I've given back some profit on this sell-off, but that is the name of the game. So I think an interesting afternoon ahead. Right, let's have a look. Do you ever use MT4 or MT5? No, I've never used those things. So no, I don't think I'd know how to use them. I use the broker I trade with. It's got a browser interface, nice and easy, and I just use that. I use TradingView, as you can see, these charts for the markets that I'm looking at, and yeah, that's all I use. I don't use anything else. Dollar yen, we looked at dollar yen. Can we have a look at Visa? Yes, we can. Where is Visa? There we go. So the stock Visa. Oh, that's that. Yeah, we looked at that earlier this week, didn't we? I mean, I would be a buyer, as usual. The only question: where does your stop loss go? I mean, that is bullet. I mean, that is a great trend in Visa, isn't it? Let's do the old coulda, shoulda, woulda. So Visa back in May 2011 were $20, and so they're $2.80. What a cracking return! Made 14 times your money on Visa. Trend is still up. We had the correction. I would say the correction's over, I think. So as usual, the only question for me is where would I put my stop? Looking at it on a daily chart, the closest I would want to stop is probably the other side of 260. I mean, a more aggressive stop. I mean, I think for me, that is where I would put my stop, the other side of 260, which is only, well, it's what, $20 away, which is less than 10% away. It's about 7% away. So that's what I would do. And the only question is, well, do you wait? Do you wait to see, is there going to be a deeper pullback to buy? Or do you just say, that's it, it's turned around, I'm going to jump on it? So for me, I'd be a buyer. Of course, there are always two sides to every argument. So if you thought, well, actually, this is a false break by Visa, then going short is always an option. So at the moment, I would be a buyer. But if you thought, actually, no, Visa is going to go plop again, then going short with a stop above 282 or a stop above that all-time high 291 would be another option. But for now, I'd be leaning towards the big trend has been up, up, up. We've had a correction that has taken some time, and is the correction over? That's how I'd be leaning. So interesting to see how that one pans out. For the short that you missed on the NASDAQ, how would you have approached selecting a profit target? I don't do targets, so I don't. I gave up on targets years ago, so I don't think about targets. You know, I'll have a rough idea in mind of where I think it was going to go. So when I did that NASDAQ short, you know, the market looked like that. Or I did, you know, when I did the initial short and then missed the other one. So the market looked like that. I was going with the trend. And if I'd been pushed for a target, I'd have said at least the old low. If I'm going with the trend, I want to see that old low tested, but it never happened, and then it did, and a bit more. So for me, no, I don't look at targets. The most important thing is where does the stop go, you know. But if you're following a trend, let's pick out what's been a good trend. Let's do that pound against the dollar, for example. So I'm long anyway. If I was buying that now and I had to think about a target, then if I think the trend is up, I'd look at a previous major high, so 132.60. So looking at it now, I think there's at least, if I was a buyer now, I think there'd be at least 100 points in that trade if I'm right. So yeah, but I don't worry about targets, to be honest. What's your opinion of Hewlett Packard? Hewlett HP, isn't it? Is it HP? What are they called? Hewlett Packard HPE. It's interesting. It's been quite boring, really, hasn't it? Considering what tech has done in the last year and a half. I mean, I don't know. What would you do? I'd probably buy it, but there's probably more interesting things to buy, isn't there? I would say, for me. I mean, I'd buy it with maybe a stop the other side of $16. But it's all a bit scrappy, isn't it? You know, it gapped higher on earnings. It's come all the way back to where it was before earnings. We've had the latest earnings. It's been hit on the latest earnings a couple of days ago. So if I had to do anything, assuming today it holds, it doesn't take out yesterday's low, I'd be a buyer and I'd put a stop the other side of $16. But it's all a bit sideways, isn't it? I think. So, yeah. Do you think, JetBlue, is that the cheap airline company, JetBlue? I mean, that trend is down, 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 isn't it? So since October 15, so again, let's do the reverse of what we did with Visa. So they were 26 quid in October 15, and now they're, well, dollars, and now they're just over $5. So they've dropped 80%. You'd have lost 80% of your money the last 9 years. I would be a seller, so I'd be looking to go short. I wouldn't go short yet. It'd be nice if they were a bit stronger, and I'd go short into some strength if they traded back up to sort of 650. But I think for me, the trend on that is down, isn't it? So yeah, I'd look to sell short. Do you think the markets will only find direction after the US elections? I would say not necessarily, but let's have a look. When was the last US election? Was it 2019? I can't remember. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? 2019, 2020. Then we had COVID as well, didn't we? So where was November? Was it in here? Am I being right? Hang on. Let me. Oh. Last US election. November 2020. All right, I'm too early. So November 2020 was the last US election. There we go. What's this? The S&P. No, there wasn't, was there? I mean, the market actually, I suppose you could say, during September, it was a little bit sideways, wasn't it? And then it started gaining ground into November. And once the election was out of the way, it really did go off to the races, didn't it? So maybe we will have a bit of chop going into the election. And let's not forget, it has been a good year, isn't it? A great year for stock market indices, US indices, even with the volatility we've seen in the last month. You look at the S&P. The S&P ended last year at 4750-ish, and it's at 5480, so it's 700 points higher. What's that? 15%, 14% higher. So it's still been an okay year, hasn't it? So maybe we will have a bit of chopper armour before the election. Let's see what happens. Can we have a look at Google? Google. Yeah, I think I'm still in Google, actually. I think I've still got... No, I'm not looking at that chart. I'm not still in it. I had been in it on the way up. I mean, the big trend for Google is up, but the trend at the moment isn't, is it? And I mean, you could argue looking at the trend line, okay, that is the trend for Google since Feb 23. So it's an interesting one, but even today, it's trading at its worst level since April. So it's on a 4.5 month low at the moment. So for Google, I would probably sit on my hands and wait for the buying opportunity is what I would be on Google. But at the moment, it is still under some pressure, isn't it? If I wanted to go short, if I was going short Google, I'd have a stop at least above 170, which was the high, the 20th of August highs. So that's what I would do on Google with that one. And what was the other one? C3.ai, ticker AI. Okay, what is this crazy company? Packaged software. Let's have a look. All right, I'm quite intrigued. So they got the ticker AI. C3.ai. What do they do? Hang on, I can't find them. If I can type C3.ai. Oh, I'm going to get some weird. C3.ai. Okay. C3 named a leader. That's not a good website, is it, for an AI company? That looks like a website I'd build, where you've blocked off half of the words. Okay, blah blah blah. AI. Okay, cool. All right, so they do all that AI stuff. All right, what do they let? The share price isn't doing much, is it? Oof, that really hasn't, is it? I mean, they were 180 December 2020, and now they're $21. So they've lost, what's that, 85%? It's again, considering the hype around AI this year, and also what technology has done, they've really underperformed, haven't they? So I don't know. I'd probably rather sell a rally, but I'd be tempted to do nothing at all at the moment. If they rallied back up, it looks interesting. They clearly had earnings this week, and the market didn't like those. Although they did surprise positively, 62%. But perhaps the outlook wasn't very good. So yeah, it just looks a bit boring to me. I'd rather sell a rally in that one. So there we go. Nvidia. that came up in the WhatsApp group this week, and I said I would be short Nvidia, and I'd still be short Nvidia, to be honest. I think that it almost feels like, famous last words, that story is gone now, isn't it, with Nvidia? So I'd rather be short, probably not here. Sell a rally in Nvidia. I mean, the big trend is still up, but it had such a great run this year. So for me, like the coin flip, will it go down $20 or up $20? I'd be more inclined to think it's going to go down $20. Nvidia at the moment. So I think it's perhaps interesting if it trades back to these early August lows, below $100. It perhaps gets a bit more interesting. And Li Auto, Li Auto, Nasdaq. No, it's another dog, innit? I mean, you could take the view, the old lows for Li Auto were down around $13. So again, if you really wanted to buy them, we're near the bottom for the last couple of years. But, it's another one that doesn't really do it for me. That one, sorry. Your views on using artificial intelligence for investment? Well, as I am a grumpy old man, I think it's all cobblers, don't I? I don't know. I think the thing is, I don't know. I don't know enough about artificial intelligence. I'm sure it could help automate, some sort of simple tasks. But I saw this week one broker has an artificial intelligence news reading thing. And it said switch on your alerts. And I got an alert today and I thought, hang on, this just about sums it up. I can't find it now though. There we go. Sees price. So this is the artificial intelligence giving me an alert. So-and-so sees price decline amid sector underperformance. No specific news explains the current trend. I thought, well, that's brilliant, isn't it? I can look at a chart and tell you that. So yeah, I'm sure it will progress as the years go on. But I'm a bit sceptical at the moment. TRP on the New York Stock Exchange. TRP, TC Energy. Oh, what's going on there? Oil and gas. I mean, if I'd have looked at that there, clearly we had just going sliding down. This was April 23, and it has made a base. So I would want to be a buyer. The only question is, where does the stop go? And the problem I've got, it's rallied 30% in 2 months, isn't it? So what do? Do you jump on board the train and just say, right, that's it, I'm going to buy it and ride it? Or do you wait for a pullback? As usual, I would wait for a pullback, and the risk is that I miss out on the market running away further. So yeah, I'd be a buyer. I'd rather buy a dip. Yeah, that's it. That's all I can say for that one at the moment. But that's had that's a good turnaround, isn't it? Since April of this year, sorry. That has had a good turnaround. So yeah, I would buy the dip, but with a risk of missing out on the dip. Tesla. So look at Tesla. Did they announce yet again yesterday their self-driving stuff? Eh? What was it? And their stock was up on the old self-driving. There we go. Tesla says it will launch full self-driving product in Europe and China early next year. It does feel as if now and again, if there's been no news recently, let's get the old self-driving news out there again. And I say that as somebody who's got a Tesla, and I like my Tesla. I'm just a bit skeptical about some of this self-driving. So anyway, what would you do? I would rather be short. I was thinking, again, I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group. I didn't do it. I was thinking about this was the perfect short up here, 260, back in July. But I think earnings were coming up, and I was a bit nervous about going short into earnings. I'd rather sell it. So if I sold it today, the closest I'd want my stop would be the other side of 240, but probably 280, which is a wide stop, but it's a volatile stock, isn't it? I do wonder, again, like Nvidia, a lot of that hype has gone. I think we're well past, peak Tesla, back in the days when they were, I think quite groundbreaking. And of course it is a congested, if you pardon the pun, congested market more and more these days, isn't it? With more and more electric cars being available. Tesla haven't done anything new in terms of cars. They got that dreadful Cybertruck thing, so and I think everyone is perhaps the risk is, particularly from some of these Chinese manufacturers, I think for the likes of Tesla and the old world car companies, I think they are going to perhaps feel the squeeze in years to come. But let's see. At the moment, I'd probably be inclined to be a seller. But again, if we look at Tesla, it's been a bit sideways and a bit drifty the last 12, 15 months, hasn't it? So let's see. Yeah, so nothing too exciting there, but I'd probably go short. Let's have a look. So that was the gap on the old self-driving is coming, and it's completely given that up, hasn't it, today? These are hourly charts again. So an interesting one. So yeah, I'd probably rather be short that one at the moment, the old Tesla. Let's see. Otherwise, if that's it, if there are no more questions, we're done, aren't we? What are these US markets doing? Let's have a quick look. And they really have given up those gains, haven't they, since the payrolls thing. So the S&P is almost back to where it was before the payrolls have come out. The Nasdaq's gone below where it was when the payrolls came out, and the Dow is just sort of flip-flopping around, not doing very much. The dollar index, interesting afternoon there. I mean, I'm short, so I want it to drift lower. Let's see what happens. Pound against the dollar, I think that's interesting going into this afternoon. Otherwise, that's it. So, like I say, there is that webinar next week on stuff. Day trading US indices next Thursday at 7 o'clock in the evening. If you're in the WhatsApp group, you get access to that. Join the WhatsApp group and use the code YouTube. You get 20% off the first month. It's well worth it. There are very, very few people who cancel after month one, which I'm really glad about. I think it's less than 10% of people who join the group cancel after the first month. So I'm good. I'm happy, obviously, that they find it useful. So join it and try it, and you can access the webinar next Thursday, run by me. Go to the website to find out more. That's who I trade with. I'll send the newsletter out tomorrow. I think it's an interesting afternoon for indices and currencies, given what's gone on after these payrolls. Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up there and do it all next Friday. Again, I think I'll be here next Friday, and I'll put another video out midweek and see what trades I've got running next Wednesday. I'll do an update there. Otherwise, we're all done. Okay, so have a good afternoon. For those of you in the WhatsApp group, I'll do a bit of an update in the next half hour or so, and see you all next week. Okay, see you then.